Alright, so to date, we still have not come up with a solution that can really address the issue that we're having, but we basically went ahead and created a template that could that would work, and it basically is deriving from what we would have created with the auto update of UIkit. That's pretty much it in that series there. So what we're looking at is a problem that initially we were trying to fix is to have the icons load quicker on a Nux project, and we had a bit of a I guess, understanding of what was happening. So Nux has two modes, I guess, one for SSR and or for server-side rendering and one for client-side rendering. Uh, the icons that UIkit uses is created with JavaScript, and JavaScript is for the most part a client-side only language that's loading in the browser. And when the Nux project is set to SSR, then by default, well, it will pretty much the page will pretty much load, or the content will load for the page, and then the JavaScript will load after the page would have been completely loaded. So that's why it takes a minute for us to see the icons, or it just flashes or starts to show probably a second or so afterwards. And our objective was to try and fix that. But um, having a better understanding of what actually occurred, we've come to the conclusion that just changing it to disabling the SSR would be a solution. But the thing is that what if you want to have an SSR application with UIKit, and you actually are going to be using the icons, like say for example on the landing page, and you don't want that to take a minute to display. So we want to go ahead and actually solve that. And the best thing that we could have come up with so far, at least so far, we're probably still gonna work on this to try to see if we can get it even better, is just to create this template here. So what's happening is that the instructions are here, is that we're basically creating the project, cd into it, we're adding UIKit, and we're making a directory in our static folder. This is the static directory is something that is comes by default in every Nux project, and we're creating a JS folder as well, and a UIKit folder, and in there we are going to do a copy and paste over of the JavaScript for UIKit itself, and also the JavaScript for the icons. And then we're going to also uh, add a script that will automate this. So this is how we can do it, but we also will pretty much be able to automate it by doing a UIKit update or post upgrade, which would basically just go ahead and copy from the node modules folder where UIKit lies, and from there it just copies it over to the static directory, and you should be in the root of your project to do this as well. Well, obviously, and pretty much the next thing is to do is just to add the script into the header of the the Nox config file. So we're adding that into that object or that property or whatever. And the reason for this is because the page will load from the top. So it has to pick up the JavaScript and the icons. So when you see the page loads, it will always show the icons because it's loading it from the top. And we're also adding the CSS as well to the project, and you can start it, and you have the other instructions on how to do that. And you can also basically go ahead and just install this template, and we also have a video tutorial and a written one that you can also look at either YouTube or on the Fedorae education site. So for this, I think we can pretty much go ahead and do a quick demonstration of what is actually happening here. And I'm going to just go ahead and clone all of this because that's what it's going to be doing. Or we could go ahead and pretty much just go through the whole installation process, and I'm going to make some small changes that will be reflected here soon enough. Let's go ahead, and I will be opening my terminal, and we can cd into projects. I disabled the autocomplete, and this is what I'm getting. So it should be actually YouTube and then projects, and I think it's view, and let's see what we have in here. So we only have these two projects. So I am going to go ahead and actually just create one from scratch, and this is how basically how we would do this for creating a Nox SSR with UIkit installed. So we're gonna do a yarn create, and this is Nox app, and we're gonna call this Nox UIkit SSR, and that should be it. All right, there we go. So we're gonna leave the project name for default. JavaScript as well is fine. Yarn is what I use. We're gonna click none because UIkit doesn't come here by default, which is kind of sad. But let's just continue. We won't be needing any of these. We won't be using any linting or anything like that. And it's going to be a universal SSR slash SSG project. So we're gonna click on that as well. And we're going to also be using node.js hosting instead of the static hosting. And I think this is okay because we're going to be using code, VS Code, and we're not using JavaScript. So let's go ahead and click on that. And my GitHub username is fine as well. And we can add Git for the most part, so that's fine. So let's just give this a second to install. All right, there we go. So let's now cd into Nox SSR, and I want to open this in code for all of us to be better able to see this. And there we go. Hopefully it's not too small. So we have everything that we need in here, and we're on the master branch. So if we look at our package.json, we don't really have anything in here except for Nux and view and all of that that's needed. Next thing that I want to do now is just to go ahead and add UIkit. And now that that is done, we're pretty much in the clear. And if we look at our Nox config, you can see that this is by default an SSR app. So if I go ahead and do something like yarn dev, we will see that it is saying that the development is on the server side and we're targeting server because we would not have disabled server side, and by default Nox is a server application. So if we now go over here and go to localhost 3000, then you can see that we have it right here. Awesome. So that is what we want. And we want to also test this thing, how it looks with the icons as well. So let us look at this project here because it does have some files in here. We have an about, and I'm just going to copy everything that we have in here. Well, we have the index and the about, so let me go ahead and paste this inside of the index file. So paste everything in there. And the next thing is that we also need to have an about.view file. And in the about.view is where we're going to add this information. And this is just for testing purposes. So we want to be sure that this thing is actually working the way that we want it to work. So there we go. So we have our index and about page. So let's go ahead and actually save all. T refreshes. In here now we're seeing the content. If we go over to the about page, we're seeing the content and we're seeing that it's saying that it's from the client, then it says from the server, but we're not getting any UI kit as yet, and that is because we haven't really configured the CSS in here, so that's why we're not seeing anything as yet. So to configure the CSS is pretty much just to come down here and just copy what we have here because I am lazy and I want to just copy it. So we're gonna add it here. It's coming from UIkit. This is in the node modules from the this to CSS and UIkit.css. That's where that is coming from. And now if we save this, you will see the difference. There we go. So if I come over here, refresh, you can now see that it is showing the actual CSS for this thing here. The next thing that we want to do now is the reason why it's not looking exactly different is because we don't have the container on here. I think in the previous video you'll see that there was some container or some margins there, but that's why that's not showing. So the reason why we're not seeing the icons is because it requires the JavaScript. So that's why we're not getting that there just yet. So for our next trick, I guess what we should be doing is just to add in these scripts. But I don't want to do it like this just yet. Well, first of all, we need to make the directory. So I'm going to go ahead and technically I could just go into static and just go ahead and create two folders. So one was JS and UIkit. Usually I would just do this because that would be much easier. But for example, if you're using a Windows machine, that probably will not work. So that's why I went ahead and just create it manually from there. So here now, what we can do is to go ahead and use this aspect of it, but instead of going here, why not just, well, I already have UIkit, so it wouldn't probably make any sense to go for this one just yet. So we could copy this script here, and I'm gonna have to stop the server, paste it in here, and for now, I am actually not going to use the minified version of this. I'm actually gonna use the default. And this is just going to go ahead and copy over the JavaScript and the icons that I had mentioned before inside of this folder that we just created just now. And we could have actually used a script, so you can see it here that it's already there, but we could actually go ahead and use this script to actually get it done. And that is something that I'm actually gonna just go ahead and add right away because this is what we want. So but it's just that this would actually go ahead and add UIkit all over again, and that's something that I don't want. This is pretty much just for the updating of it. So let's go ahead and add it right here. And I want to, as I had mentioned before, I'm going to change this over from min to the default. And it's because we're pretty much in development, and usually the min is for production. So that's that. Let's go ahead and save it. So this would add UIkit, and this would copy over the files, so basically the update. If it's a case that you just want to copy over the files, then you can go ahead and like create a script that will pretty much just copy it over, just like what we have up here. So that should be fine as well. So now we're pretty much all set. Final thing that we need to do is just to configure the script over here, and that is just to go into the head and just I'm gonna copy this over because I don't want to waste time pasting it. So you just add that right there, and again I had changed this over to the normal one, and now we are getting the JavaScript and we're also getting the icons that is also JavaScript. And we can save this and we can do a yarn dev to start the dev server now. See, we are still in development. We're still using the server side, and we're still using we're targeting the server as well. So if we go over here and copy and reload, you can see that it is on the server and it is showing the icons just the same. In the previous video that I would have created, you would have noticed that it was on the client and you would have seen the icons just the same, but now we're on the server and it's actually showing here. Just that we have some additional configurations as it relates to this, and this is the only problem that we have. But if you do want to use SSR, a Nox SSR app, and you want to use UIkit, this is pretty much the best approach that we have found so far. If you guys have anything better, it would be great if you guys could just point us to it and let us see how that goes. But as it relates to this is the best that we could do. And that is pretty much it for the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.